It seems like quite a few people producing electronic dance music have a tough time of turning a musical idea into a full track. And while there might be many different reasons for that, maybe one of them is actually this mentality itself. So in this video, I want to take a look at different arrangement types and why you might need more than one musical idea to create a whole arrangement. Before we jump in, I just released my first MIDI pack containing 30 advanced house chord progressions. If that's something you might be interested in, feel free to check out the link in the description. In music in general, but especially in the case of electronic dance music, there are kind of two counterforces at work. One of them is predictability and the other one surprise. So we kind of like our music to be somewhat predictable. We like repeating rhythms and repeating patterns that we can dance to. We also like recognizable melodies and harmonies and stuff like that. But we also really like to be caught off guard by something surprising and unexpected in our music. So these two counterforces are kind of working together and against each other at the same time, which is also true in the context of arrangement. So let's jump into a track called Clockwork by Wickham to kind of have an example we can work with. So it starts with this nice, familiar, steady dance groove, right? Let's jump ahead. Kind of already some call and response stuff going on, which we're familiar with. Let's jump a bit more. Cool bass line. So we have more and more elements coming into the arrangement. Let's skip a bit more. More melodic elements, kind of doing more call and response stuff. Nice. Let's jump into the breakdown. So cool. Another advanced melodic line coming in. Now breaking down. So really cool, surprising moment here where you have the breakdown and you know something is about to happen, but you don't exactly know what. And then this cool switch melodically happens right there. And I feel like when it comes to arranging your music and electronic dance music, it's not necessarily about having one musical idea that you then turn into a track. It's more about creating these moments of surprise and intrigue. So you kind of want to create some grooves and some steadiness, and then you want to have these moments of surprise. So obviously there is a big spectrum of different types of arrangements that you can go for depending on what type of music you like. And we're going to listen to a bunch of more tracks in a second. In a way, if you have your predictability on one hand and surprise on the other, if you go really extreme on the predictability side, you get to the more commercial mainstream stuff where there's a very clear arrangement structure that you can follow and things are really easy to follow along for most people, but that also makes them less surprising to others, I guess. And then if you take it to the extreme on the other side, you can go very experimental and kind of make productions which don't have much of a arrangement structure at all, and maybe might not even be rhythmically or harmonically understandable in a way, so really experimental. But they're still really surprising and can be pleasant and interesting to listen to. You don't know what to expect, so they're very unpredictable, but maybe not that easy to dance to and to groove to together. So in a way, you kind of want to find your personal sweet spot that combines the two of them to the degree that you like, and that really varies depending on what type of sound you want to go for. Let's go for something quite experimental, for example. This is by Ricardo Villalobos on Perlon, Conspiracy 3. So my mom would probably ask me, what are we listening to? What's happening? So this is more experimental music, which is still really cool. And there's all this stuff happening. And if you take a second to listen to that, which I can just recommend, in the whole track, there's so much going on and the arrangement is quite long. On the same record, you have Conspiracy 2, which is kind of similar sound design wise, but it has like a beat. There's still weird stuff happening in there, but okay. And then going slightly towards the other direction, but still being kind of experimental. This track, I See the Light by Matthias. Really groove based, but so much stuff going on, right? So much happening there. I can just recommend you to check out the whole track. So also really cool. So I can just recommend to you to listen to the whole track. There's so much stuff going on. But if we then jump into another track, Paranoid by Olsvanger, or I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry. If we check out this arrangement, check this out. First of all, it starts with this weird voice, right? Then we jump into these kind of this build. Weird voice going on, kind of skipping through this quickly. Kind of this part, you kind of feel like it's pushing towards something, right? Many elements. You skip through here, it kind of stays the same. There's a breakdown, stuff happening, but it still stays with this idea, right? So you're kind of, okay, maybe something is about to happen at some point. It's kind of creating this vibe, and it keeps going all the way to the breakdown. Okay, quite a statement. Strong breakdown. Then you get this build-up. Cool. I'm just gonna let this play for a second because it's nice. Later on it skips. So this whole track is kind of arranged for this moment right here. It kind of stays the same. Obviously there are many cool elements and things, but it's kind of working to create this moment of surprise. And that's really what I want to get at in this video, is that instead of just thinking of a musical idea, which you then turn into a track, which can be fine, especially if you're a beginner, to work things out. But if you want to step up your arrangement game, I wouldn't be so fixed on one musical idea, and more like create several musical ideas and kind of think of what type of moment do I want to create? Do I want a very nice, surprising moment that we're building towards? Or do I want to have several surprising moments? Do I want to have surprising moments all the time? If you kind of think on the spectrum of predictability versus surprise, you kind of can think, where do you want your track to land? Like personally, first of all, what type of sound you want to go for in general, and yeah, where do you want your idea to land? And I think this can be quite helpful, because this way you don't start a musical idea with the mindset that, okay, I start one musical idea and then I bring in some variations and stuff like this. You can immediately think, okay, what do I need to create the tensions and changes that I need to create these sort of moments? So if you want to go for something quite experimental, like in the I See the Light Matthias track, it's not that experimental, but you know what I mean. So it's like really minimal. There's lots of stuff going on. You will need production skills and a setup and things, maybe some tools which do like generative sound design that is constantly evolving. You're going to be able to do it that way. If you want to have an idea which is more classic, so we're going to jump to this classic house track over here, you might need not just need one musical idea, you might actually need several decent musical ideas that you can then bring together to create a track from that. So let's listen to the Blake Baxter track over here, for example. And you can ignore the vocals if you don't like that kind of stuff. So what I wanted to say here, oftentimes in classic house tracks, you have these bridges with like instrumentals and just a drum groove. So in a way, if you build a track like that, you will need some parts which by themselves can already stand as an element, as somewhat of a bridge in your music. So it goes into this groove by itself. Okay, what's happening next? I'm cutting here. So you have this idea. Switch. Nice. So the idea comes kind of across. You have several musical ideas in here to kind of work your way through the track. And obviously you can start with one musical idea and then maybe come up with another one. But if you already start your productions in a way, especially if you're working in live and you have this view where you can just put some ideas in there, I think that can actually be quite nice and helpful. So different types of arrangements obviously need different approaches and different skill sets to make them happen and stuff like that. Oftentimes, people who make music, who are more like DJs and not necessarily a traditional musician, kind of struggle to come up with musical ideas sometimes. And historically, in electronic dance music, obviously sampling has played a huge role. So I wouldn't hesitate, or I wouldn't shy away from trying to get your musical content in whatever way is possible to you. So let's listen to another track, which is really cool. This one right here. You can tell, so lots of tension being built, super nice, build up, but there's no drop yet. But you can hear how there are many sampled elements in there being combined with electronic productions.
Explores the unknown.
Banger. Nice. So if you're wondering why we're just looking at snippets, in a way, I don't think that arrangements or making arrangements, being able to arrange stuff is just about looking at the framework and checking out the whole track, because there are millions of tracks out there and frameworks which you could technically look at and then just copy the arrangement and stuff. But the idea is kind of, I guess, to make something of your own. And if you're struggling to make arrangements, then obviously just having tracks out there might not necessarily be enough, right? So let's listen to another track. This is a really cool track by D Grinders. And this one, for example, has just like one idea, this bass line. But the drums are so nasty that it's kind of enough to get the track going. So you have different parts, just variation in the drums. Some drums coming out, a melodic part. But the whole track is pretty much like this, but the drums and the bass and everything comes together so nicely that the track is strong enough to have this one musical idea type of arrangement, right? So you kind of have to keep in mind also, if the idea that you've come up with, is it the type of idea that can stand alone for a whole track? And if that's not the case, you might need various or other musical ideas to combine with this one. Things that go kind of hand in hand with the idea that you just created. So maybe do it as if you were starting a second track and then try to combine them and see how you can create some moment of surprise with these different musical ideas. Because you kind of need a strong musical idea that works by itself if you just want to work with one idea, or you might end up making a track which is more in the commercial realm because it's just kind of simple and has a clear arrangements and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but I guess many of you who are kind of struggling with arrangements are actually looking for ways to make that happen. So yeah, I hope you found this helpful. Let me know in the comments if I left you with any questions or if you have any other type of feedback or thoughts on this topic. Also, like I said, feel free to check out the link in the description to my chord pack. I think there's some really useful chord progressions in there. Feel free to check that out. And I'm looking forward to see you in the next one. Ciao.